I don't get good vibes from this episode coming up. Hey! It's Romania Black, and yeah, I'm not getting good vibes, y'all. The Romania Mac senses are tingling, and I'm not getting good juju vibes. My dog just got a new toy that he's squeaking, so I'm hoping that that does not carry on during the reaction, Huckleberry. It's like looking at me like, what? So yeah, there's gonna be like tragic moments and Huckleberry squeaking a squeaky toy in the background. Hopefully that doesn't happen, right? But in any case, I'm really excited for this episode because we're on episode 20. I'm not looking forward to it because when we last left off, it looked like Arnheid was about to kick the bucket, and that just doesn't bode well at all for anybody. So I do have a few comments before we start, and I'm not throwing this toy anymore, so he's gonna have to deal with it. But I do have a few comments before we start. So Mr. Man was talking about pacifism and how the show displays pacifism, that usually it's seen as something that's weak or childish. But Vinland Saga finds a way to take this concept and say that it's actually the more harder, more pure concept that not everyone can achieve. And because not everyone can achieve it, they downplay it. And I really thought that was intriguing. Like, people say that being pacifist and nonviolent, they're like, oh, that's just the coward's option. It's like, no, that's actually the really hard option. And violence is the easy way. But not everybody can be nonviolent or be like what Thorfinn wants to be. And so they often degrade it or downplay it, being like, oh, well, it's not that important or it's not that big of a deal because they know they can't do it. And I was like, that's such an intriguing take on it. Like, the pure ones, as he said, often are the ones that suffer the most. And we see that with Thor's trying to teach his son, and then what happens to him in season 1. We're seeing that with Thorfinn now. But it's a hard road to take. But Thorfinn seems like he is determined to make it work. And we root for him because we want it to work out for him. But Mr. Man, I thought that was a really good comment. Little Dude talks about how Thorfinn, I said in a few episodes ago that I hate that he was called stupid. I was like, Thorfinn's not stupid, he just isn't educated. There's a difference. And Little Dude was talking about how that could also have come from in season 1, episode 22, when Askeladd was telling him that he was just a stupid dog chasing and just coming whenever he was called to eat. And I was like, oh my gosh, the idea of Thorfinn carrying that mantra with him from Askeladd, even now when he's changed so much and grown so much, is so good. I was like, oh my gosh. Just, again, the influence Askeladd has had on him. So I thought that was really good to point out. And then Alexander Q talked about how the difference between Thorgil and Thorgil. Thorgil loves killing. He likes to battle to the death, and he likes the thrill of the kill. Thorgil, I don't think likes killing as much. I think Thorgil is not afraid to kill if he deems that it's necessary, but he more likes the battle side of it. He just wants to fight people. He just wants to brawl. He's like Goku. He just wants to brawl and then keep battling over and over again. And he gets upset when you leave and you don't want to fight him, right? Thorgil, I don't think cares about the battle aspect of it, but is more like the hunt and the strategy and then getting the kill and winning. So there is a distinct difference between them, but they both have kind of that like battle thirstiness to them, which is funny because Thorfinn, our other Thor, is not wanting to do any of that. So yeah, I'm not looking forward to this episode. I've heard through the Discord that it was previewed at one of the anime conventions. You lucky dogs. How cool would it be to see that at an anime convention? That'd be so freaking cool. And then to talk about it with others, that'd be so awesome. So yeah, that would be really exciting. Maybe one day I'll be on a panel at a convention and we'll preview an episode and talk about it. That would be the best thing ever. I would eat that up. But real quick, before we start, I want to give a specific shout out to our philanthropy tier over on Patreon. Thank you all so much for your contributions each month. And in fact, thanks to all of patrons, because whether you're just donating $1 or $5 or you're in the philanthropy tier like these wonderful souls, you all help me do what I love to do and to keep doing it and putting it on this channel for you all to watch. So I'm glad y'all like hearing me ramble about Vinland Saga. I love this series. It's so good. And I'm just like fingers crossing that they make season 3 and that it doesn't take 5 years. I can wait a year or two. I've done that with many other shows, but you know, I just want them to make more content for Vinland Saga because the story is that good. But special thanks to Edgar, to Dana, to Anime Annie, to Nameless Monster, to Tyrone, to Shimoyama, to Be Happy, to Eric, to Sunspots, to Alex Cornejo, and Shimoyama. I think I said Shimoyama and Be Happy, but thank you all, and Dana, thank you all so much. You all are amazing, and I greatly appreciate all the support that you give and everything you contribute to help make this channel wonderful. So, all of my love to all of you on Patreon and all of you on YouTube. So, I don't have any other comments, just ready for whatever this episode brings us. So, we're not going to waste any more time. I've poured a beverage. I'm ready to go. We're going to start Vinland Saga episode 20. And we're going to do that here in 3, 2, 1. And let's go. I was doing good. I was doing good. I was holding it together because I knew Arnheid was gonna die. Like, it was gonna happen, right? They didn't do that whole big deal with her and Gardar and the children that breaks my heart into 1,000 pieces. They weren't gonna do that and then let her like somehow live. I was like, that's not gonna happen. Even when, you know, Einar was like, but no, that it wasn't gonna happen. She was gonna die. So I was doing real good. I was like, I'm gonna hold it together. I'm gonna be fine. Because I don't usually cry and get super emotional during anime and manga. I usually am pretty thick-skinned and hold it together. But the moment that Thorfinn started giving the speech about Vinland that his father gave to the slave, I was done. I was like, and here we go. And my eyes were stinging with the salty tears. I was like, And I probably would have cried until Thorfinn's like, oh, hey, you know what hasn't happened this season? I haven't had a chat with Canute. Let's go do that. And I was like, oh my God, why? So, oh my gosh, this episode, Vinland Saga does this. It starts out with this one big arc, and then there's in the middle, which I would argue, for me, the middle, well, I don't know. Season 1's so strong, and season 2's been really strong too. I don't want to say that arcs are weaker necessarily, because they're not. That's not what I'm saying. But for me, I think that there was a cohesive first act, like the first 6 episodes were to build up Thorfinn and his dad and Askeladd and the thing with Floki, and for his dad to die and for Thorfinn to be taken in by Askeladd. Those first 6 episodes are like, there they are. That's an arc, and it's very solid. And then from episode 7 to about 16, in between 7 and 16, they're all really good episodes, but they don't feel that they have a cohesive narrative and everything. I'm not saying that, but they're not as tightly woven maybe as the final arc is. Like, once Canute comes out of his shell, brushes the cape back, and then we get into the final bit where they're headed to see Swin, and then the whole thing goes down with the meeting there in town, and then with Thorfinn and everything, like, and then Bjorn and all, and his battle with Askeladd. I would say the last 6 episodes and the first 6 episodes are probably my favorite in season 1. I know a lot of people like episode 14, and it's a really good episode. But for me, I really like the bookend arcs of season 1. All of them are good. There's not really a bad episode in season 1 of Vinland Saga. It's solid all the way through, but those are probably my favorites. And here, I would say that it did take me a couple episodes to like get back into, oh my God, Thorfinn's a man. Oh my God, he's grown up. Oh my God, he's not a child anymore. He's changing. But from like episode 9 on, episode 8 to 9 on, like the cursed head, from the cursed head, Oath and the cursed head on, it has been solid as a rock. I've been like, okay, let's do this. I would say from episode 8 and 9 moving forward, it's been amazing. And I've loved every minute of it. I did love the first part, don't get me wrong. I love the bromance that developed between Einar and Thorfinn. It was back this episode. It was back, baby. I was like, are we going to have a love triangle between Einar and Thorfinn and Canute? I don't know. Blondes have more fun. Who knows? Let's talk about this episode. But the last 3 or 4 episodes have been so damn good that I'd say Oath and Cursed Head are my favorite in this season so far. 8, 9, and 10 are my favorite episodes. But this last set of episodes, like, has just been it doesn't miss. It's just been so damn good. The quality's been so good. and I've really, really enjoyed it. And I'm grateful for the controversy, because if anything, it will maybe hopefully ensure that we do another season. So if anything, it will give us that. But man, this episode was just, whoo! It had some surprises in it. So let's talk about this. Fox. Getting Fox. In my life, I've killed 13 people. I think that is so significant to start out with his character saying that. Because when we met the ragtag group of Snake and his men, I had some assumptions about them. I had assumptions that they were bounty hunters that were hired to protect Kettle's farm. I had assumptions that maybe they were an organization that was like the Yams Vikings. They were an organization of Vikings that did specialty jobs, kind of like what Askeladd did. Askeladd was very dirty deeds done dirt cheap. That was like his motif, and I felt like these guys were just like for hire, which they kind of are, but they're trying to start a new life, and they're running away from an old one, right? That's why they're in this group. But my impression of them was that they had killed lots of men and they didn't care. That they were just doing their job, and that was just how it went, and they didn't care. So it comes as an immense surprise, not only how Snake views himself and views his sense of duty, but with Fox, of all people. That we start out with Fox, who has counted and kept track of how many people he's killed. And it reminded me a lot of Thorfinn, that he carries the dead with him. That he knows exactly how many men he's killed. He remembers the one man's expression on his face, and he keeps that memory and holds that sin with him. I thought that was so good, and it completely takes your expectations of Snake's men and kind of subverts it and says, no, these guys, they still know what they've done, and they carry that sin with them. It's God. And you don't exactly know if it's Fox or not at the beginning, because unless you know his voice actor really well, it was hard for me to know who exactly was talking in the beginning. But then we see the young, he looks like he's wealthy. And then we see Fox. Compared to the average idiot, I think I'm pretty strong. And we see the boy drop the sword onto the dirt. And he says, killing is fun. And then he recalls the moment, he says, the look on that posturing Jarl's brat. So posturing Jarls, like Jarls is not capitalized, so it's just like maybe a tribe or a group that he was from. The look on his face. And so he relates the look on the face of that child dying and the elation he felt at the revenge. And now he's saying, I am that Jarl's brat now. I'm on the receiving end. I was elated in killing him because of whatever the reason was. But now the Yams Vikings have the same look on their face that I did, and I'm going to know how he felt when they kill me. Like, that's such a revelation. And to have it in that moment, again, it ties back to Thorfinn's whole thing about violence only begets violence. It just creates a cycle, and you may be on the winning end of that cycle at one point, but more than likely you are going to be on the losing end of it at another point. And then what do you do? But man, that was just, he says, his rows of enemies in front of me, they're exactly how I was. And you see the man smiling, like, as he's like going towards them, and he admits that he's scared. Like, he's like, damn it, they're enjoying this. Like, for one of Snake's men who has seemed so confident and sure of themselves this entire season to come out and admit, I'm scared, like, that's human. Like, just the idea that this moment humanizes them and makes us realize as the audience, they are no different than Thorfinn and Einar. They are just doing what they thought what they needed to do to survive all this time. And it is brutal. Like, the battles with Thorgil back in season 1 and with Askeladd, like, they played it up. It was like a merry old band of pirates, and we're like, oh, we're just doing our thing. And episode 14 was really the only one that truly showed how unglamorous the murdering was. Episode 14 was so distinct because it showed from the citizen's perspective, the civilian perspective, what it felt like when Askeladd and them came. And the murders were not this big grandiose thing. It was just a mass murder, a mass slaughter. And not to say that when they raided the villages, there wasn't that feeling of dread either, but episode 14 was really poignant about it. And this whole season, anytime there's been violence, it has not been glamorous. It's not been glorified. It has been down and dirty and ugly. and meant to be as traumatizing and horrific as it can be, because that's the reality of it, right? It's not like a video game. It's the reality of battle and war is quite grim. But man, oh, that one guy was leaning down with the ponytail. For a second, I thought it was Snake and he'd lost his helmet and his armor, and I was like, no! But thank God it wasn't. I'm like, I'm not ready for Snake to die yet. I want to see more of Snake. Then Badger! MVP Badger! Losing an arm and still going after a Jomsviking with one hand and an axe? I would have pegged Badger to be one of the first to die on the battlefield, and here he is just like holding his own. I didn't give Badger enough credit. But then he said Goodmund. Goodmund. So Fox knows Badger's real name. And he shouted it out loud. I mean, was I shipping Fox and Badger? Kind of. But am I shipping them now? Yes. I am hardcore shipping Fox and Goodmund, Fox and Badger now. Especially since since he knows his name. Yeah, it feels almost like a Doctor Who thing. Like, what's their real name? Like, that was... I also love that Snake goes in there to save him. Like, he gets close. The choreography of the fight scene between Badger and the Jomsviking, the animation of the axe swinging and everything was really well done. I thought that was really good. It was very fluid. And then, yeah, Snake coming in there. Snake just chopped off that guy's head. Like, just came in and just did a swirl with his sword and sliced it. Oh, my God. And then tells them to retreat. And I like that Badger's like, I can still fight. I'm like, dude, you're delusional. And Snake says you're delusional. He's like, do you not see that we're about to die? He's like, we need to get out of here. This is a losing battle. We are not winning. He's like, did all these men have to die for you to know how much stronger the enemy is? And he's like, get out. Go to the fort. Retreat. My favorite, the best part of this whole damn episode, the only funny part of the whole episode was this one guy in the front line that was like, all right. He knows what's up. I love that they say retreat, and that guy was like, oh, thank God. It's like when you've been playing dodgeball in the gym, and you're like one of the last ones, and PE time is over, and they're like, oh, we're out of time to go, and you're like, oh, thank God. Like, let's get out of here. Oh, that was the one moment of levity in this entire episode, and I was like, thank you, mangaka, because I needed that one laugh to make up for all of the not laughter that the rest of this episode is. So Kettle's like, how dare you leave? And the thing about it is, like, Kettle is so delusional that he thinks, he's like, oh, do you think I'm going to forgive your debts if you run away? And I'm like, dude, have you been paying attention? Everyone's dying. These people don't give a shit anymore. They don't care about their debts. They just don't want to die. And the moment somebody of authority is like, yeah, get out, they're like, oh, thank God, let's go. He's like, do you think I'll forgive your debts after this? And the guy that's holding him, like, is just, like, cracks up because he's like, he kind of looks like Leaf a little bit, which doesn't help matters. But he's like, debt, you're finished, Kettle. He's like, Mr. Kettle, you're done. And I like the little animation of his eye twitching. That's really good. He's like, do you understand what it's like to be poor like us now? That line, I love that line so much because he's like, now do you know what it's like to be on the losing end of something? To feel helpless? To feel like the doors are closing on you and you have no choice and you're powerless? No matter how unfair it may be, you shouldn't defy the king. That line, it's so scathing because he's just like, it's like how a master would talk to a slave, right? Because he's like, no matter how unfair slavery is, you have to obey your master. And that's what he's saying here. He's like, no matter how unfair it is, you shouldn't disobey your king. Like, in the same vein, oh, it's just like such karma poetry. It's just, ooh, it burns. It's the same reason we always listen to you. Yeah, that when it hits that hard to Kettle, he's like, the only reason we put up with it was because we knew that if we didn't, we would die. So that's why we listened. That's the only reason. What human would do that? He's like, now you know how it feels. Now you know that burning sensation within us to rebel because you're doing it too. So it's just, man, it is like ice down a throat, right? It's so good. I'm like, that is amazing. Might makes right, Mr. Kettle. Didn't you tell us that up on the mountain? Didn't you scream that to us if that's how we were going to overtake Canute? The world exists for people stronger than you. which is exactly the argument that the masters have been giving the slaves all this time. It's incredible. I love the karma that is dealt to Kettle in this moment. And then we cut to Canute, right? And Kettle's just completely stunned. And he lets him go. And the guy's like, yoink, bye. And that's when he sees the guard coming at him. And the guard sees Kettle and slices him and cuts him. Cuts him with the axe. Knocks the helmet off and cuts him with the axe. And that's when Wolf's like, well, shit, I think we might have killed Kettle. Again, another point of levity. He's like, I think one of my men just killed Kettle. I'll have to go check it out to be sure. So, what I like about this part of the episode is examining Canute. He's like, how inept. My orders were to capture him. Here's the thing. We all, as the audience, may be like, at the end of this episode, going, Thorfinn, why are you going to see Canute? This seems like a problem. What are you hoping to do? But I think that actually Canute, upon hearing Thorfinn and being like, oh, hey, you've changed since we last met, I have a feeling that maybe Canute might be a little bit more receptive than we, the audience, thinks at first. Because what Canute is suggesting here is Canute didn't want to kill Kettle. He didn't want to kill anybody. But he felt that the only way to deal with the situation was to put an offer on the table, and if they said no, then to take it by force. And I feel like what Thorfinn's going to say is, hey, that whole taking it by force thing, maybe we shouldn't do that. Maybe we could do something different, right? We'll talk about Thorfinn at the end of the episode and him going to Canute. He said, my orders were to capture him, not kill him. And he said, and because Wolf apologizes, and then he says, also, the men are attacking the backs of the fleeing soldiers. That also goes against my orders. Tell Floki not to pursue them. Because he's like, once they retreat, because essentially, I mean, Canute's not dumb. Canute knows they're retreating. Their forces are extremely limited. He's like, we don't even have to fight anymore. We just have to roll up and take it over. Like, the battle's done, essentially. He's like, the battle's over. We just have to roll up, take what is ours now, and go. He's like, we made our showing. That's it. We're done. And that's essentially what he says. Like, we don't need to keep killing for no reason. Again, Canute likes to view people as assets, which is his one connection to Kettle. He does view people as assets and things he can use for later. And so he wants to keep as many of them alive as possible. But man, Thorgil gets biggest balls of the year award, because not only, like, I anticipated Canute putting up more of a might battle against Thorgil, but the moment his sword was instantly like one swing of Thorgil's sword sprained his hand and nearly broke his sword in half. I was like, oh shit, Thorgil doesn't come to play at all, right? And the thing about that's crazy about it is what Canute says about him when he leaves. But yeah, just can we talk about I'm not attracted to Thorgil at all. I'm not, but I will recognize an aesthetically pleasing body when I see it. And there are some shots. There was like a downward angle, a downcast camera view of Thorgil's like 8-pack and his ripped muscles. I can appreciate it. I was like, if you are simping for Thorgil, this was your episode, right? He says, now is my chance. And here's the thing too. Canute says, treat the bodies with care. Like, Canute and Thorfinn are interesting because I don't agree with some of Canute's methods, right? I feel like Canute and Thorfinn are two halves of the same coin. What they both want, and we've talked about this in previous comments, they both want a utopia, right? They want a utopia that is somewhat free of war and slavery and is better for each of their nation's peoples. But they both want the same thing. And Thorfinn is trying to figure out how can he get the thing in keeping with his ideology of violence, begetting violence, and avoiding that. Canute doesn't seem to care if violence begets violence as long as he ends up winning and gets to do what he wants. But Thorfinn is saying that that's not possible. Thorfinn's like, if you keep fighting battles, you're just going to fight bigger enemies. You're not getting the utopia that you wanted. You're just falling into the same pattern and cycle as your father before you that you were trying to go against. So Thorfinn has the right mentality. He just doesn't have the means to put it into practice. And Canute kind of has the means to put it into practice, but he doesn't have the right ideology. So essentially, if Thorfinn and Canute can come together, maybe they can get things accomplished. I don't know. My fear in all of this, and I'll probably repeat it later, my fear is that Thorfinn is not going to go back to Leif. That Canute is going to see Thorfinn and be like, wow, you've changed. Oh, you're hot now. Oh, you're smart now. Oh, you have ideas. You're coming with me. And that's what I'm afraid is going to happen. Thorfinn is going to get yoinked by Canute and being like, you're coming back to Denmark with me. And Canute's going to be like, and Thorfinn's going to be like, wait, but my friends and family. And he's going to be like, no, and take him away. He's like, I'm tired of talking to my dad's head. I want to talk to you instead, Thorfinn. That's what I'm afraid is going to happen. Canute's going to be like, why am I talking to a disembodied head over here when I can talk to you? You know, and put him on his council. That's what I'm afraid is going to happen. And poor Leif is going to be like, why? So it could go a number of ways, right? I feel like the story could go a number of different routes. It could either have Thorfinn go, have the powwow with Canute, and then Thorfinn be like, peace up. Next time we see each other, we'll talk more. One of those things. And then he goes with Leif. That's option A. Option B is that Canute's like, okay, I'm going to take you with me, Thorfinn. No, you're not going back with them. You're going with me. And takes him hostage and takes him back to Denmark. That's option 2. Option 3 is that Einar gets wind of all of this and like goes to try to rescue Thorfinn and then gets caught up in all this and a big battle occurs and then maybe he gets out with Leif, maybe he doesn't. I don't think that that's the likely option, but who knows with this series at this point. And then the fourth option is that the soldiers or whatever, or Floki, like, orders them to go charge after Leif and them. And then Thorfinn is left with no choice but to go with Canute. So I'm happy that they're talking, but it almost feels like an afterthought at this point that Thorfinn's like, I haven't talked to Canute. The fans will want to see that. Like, it doesn't, but I will say, though, Thorfinn has a reason why he's going to talk with Canute, and we'll touch base on it later. I don't think that what I just said is entirely the case. Although it is like, it almost seems to come out of nowhere, but I think there's a reason for it. When we get to Thorfinn, we'll touch base on it. But man, Canute's face when he turns around and sees like Thorgil like coming for him, like that look on his face is like, holy shit, like his face goes white because that's the last thing you want to see is this big, tall, blonde Viking coming at you. Also going to point out the rainbow there in the beginning in the OP. I can't believe I didn't notice it was Snake until the very end. That was the one fighting in the OP. But man, Canute's sword like nearly gets shattered in one blow from Thorgil. Like that is, and he just looks like he has seen a ghost. Like what I appreciate about Canute is that Canute's character comes across as being this, he has a kingly air. Of course, he's always been a diva. We've always said that about Canute. But Canute is very genuine in knowing, like, shit, I'm in trouble. Like, Canute is not the type of character that will shy away from being honest about being in a bad situation. And he realizes his hand is sprung. I love that he uses the cape to try to, like, distract him. He's like, and then it doesn't work. Thorgil sees past it and, like, knees him in the gut. But because he villain monologues for 2 seconds, it gives Wolf the time to strike back. I will say, this angle of Thorgil, where he is like got his foot down on Canute's head, and we see the down angle. That's what I was talking about. It's not a bad angle. I can aesthetically please it. I can aesthetically accept it. But then Ulf or Wolf, however Crunchyroll wants to call his name, he comes in and goes all Mikasa by stabbing him through the hand with the blade. But I could have done without seeing the eyeball taken out. I was like, I thought we were done with the eyeballs getting taken out. Nope. Thought we were done. Thought we were done with that. I hate my eyes being touched. It's like the grossest thing. So anytime I see an eyeball, I'm like, ugh. Game of Thrones was just a bad deal for me in that regard. But Thorgil is just like him, like having this bestial scream, just in rage, where he realizes that he is not going to win. And I will give Thorgil this. I didn't think he'd retreat. I thought Thorgil was going to die. I thought he was going to stay there and fight till the end like Kettle wanted to, and he was going to get taken down by Canute's men. But no, he actually is like, I need to go live to fight another day, and he is actually smart enough to run off. I'll give him that. Didn't see it coming. Not at all. But the thing about it is that as he runs away with his bloody arm, and he's like, don't pursue him, Wolf. You're hurt too. You need to tend to your wounds. I let my guard down, but more than that, he's a bold man. He's like that. He's like, that was a bold strategy to come at me by yourself. And he's like, and I let my guard down and it nearly got me killed. But then he says, I wish he'd served me again. That is the thing about Canute's character that's so fascinating to me, is that Canute doesn't seem to hold grudges, right? He doesn't seem to hold a grudge. Like, I sincerely think Canute would have welcomed Thorgil back into his ranks with open arms because he just wants to be surrounded by strong people. Now, there's two ways to look at that. The nice way to look at it is like, oh, Canute doesn't hold grudges. He held no grudge, which, again, he held no grudge against his brother either, but he killed him. He's like, he holds no grudges. He's not going to be the type of person to, like, chase after someone just to kill them for no reason, right? So there's the nice way to look at it. But the other way to look at it is, the not so nice way is saying, oh, I wish I could just use him. He's strong. He'd be valuable. He's an asset. So there's a nice way to look at it, and then a not so nice. The nice way of looking at it is saying that Canute is okay with people despite them trying to kill him. He doesn't hold grudges. But then the other way of looking at it is he just deems people as assets, and he's like, oh, well, he had every right to attack me. I was coming after his farm. Wish he'd fight with me because he'd be a valuable asset. Like, it's interesting that there's multiple ways to look at that, but I find the fact that he would welcome Thorgil back so fascinating, right? And so they all fall. And again, what's interesting here too is that it's the fact that the king is under attack that gets everybody to fall back. And that like Thorgil inadvertently just saved maybe his father and maybe Snake. So, and I just love that Snake's like, what the hell? He's like, what's going on? And then he rightfully thinks it's Thorgil. What gets me too is that Snake, he sees Kettle and he sees that he's still alive. But what's fascinating is that he checks his pulse and he's like, I think this speaks volumes of Snake's character. He says, I could leave you on the battlefield to die and you probably deserve it, but you have a responsibility. You have to own up to what you started. You're not getting out of this easy by dying. That's the thing. I feel like to Snake, Kettle staying alive is more than just letting him die. He's like, you're not going to take the easy way out and die on this battlefield. You're going to own up to all the men that you've caused to die, and you're going to own up in front of Canute for it. He's like, that's going to be the case. You're not just getting out of this scot-free. You're not getting an easy way out. So yeah, again, dying is easy, living is harder, right? So, oh man, I at first I was like, why are you just dragging him back into the fold? Like, you're dragging him off the battlefield and taking your time and energy to do that. What are you doing? But now, no, it makes sense. Snake's like, you're the one that started this massacre. You're going to end it. You're going to either hand over the ground to Canute and see it through, or you're going to die in front of him. Snake. We'll talk more about him when we get to the wagon. But yeah, and the battlefield is it's just grisly. Like, there's body parts everywhere. There's like, and it goes back to season 1 where it was showing people on the battlefield, but then like the others like just sitting there in dismay at everything they've seen. Like, it's just the aftermath of a bloodbath. And so then we go to Arnheid dying, and the sound that she talks about of hearing the screams, when she said it sounded like the world falling apart. It's so telling, and it's such a disturbing moment, because there are people around the world that could be potentially watching this that are in war right now, that are in battles right now, and they know what that sounds like. And it's very emotional, but it's so true, and it's horrifying because it's real, because it's still happening to people. Like I'm privileged enough to be able to record this video and post it online for you all to watch, but there are people around the world at this very second that could be hearing the sound of their world falling apart. And that is so horrifying, right? It's horrifying. And it really makes you emotional. And so just that moment there, I was like, oh my God. But again, you know that Arnheid's going to die, and she basically tells them that. And Einar tries everything to keep her alive. He tells her they're not slaves anymore. They're going to leave this place, the battle they have nothing to do with. And she asks Leif, she's like, where are we going? And Leif's like, well, we're going to go back to Iceland. And she's like, are there slaves there? Are there wars there? And Leif's like, I mean, yeah, there's been wars there. I can't say there's not going to be a war there. And he doesn't answer the slave question, which is interesting because, you know, Thor's didn't have any slaves, but there were others that did. So I feel like he was like, I don't know if I want to answer that question either. And then she's like, yeah, I'm not going. And it's so awful because she's like, Gardar and the children are waiting for me. And we see that, like, Hjalti, like, running around, and he's holding the baby. And then it's so tragic. She says her thank yous to them. And she's like, I was all alone, but your stories got me through. And to hang in there. And what's so sad is that Thorfinn, he's like, and then at this point, Einar's like about to confess to her, and Thorfinn's like, damn it. He's like, move, let's try to save her. And he tries to, he remembers the CPR technique that his dad taught him, right? That he used on the slave back then. Like the parallels from season 1 are all coming full circle. And he tried to use the technique that his father used on the slave back then. It doesn't work this time. Like back then it worked, and here it doesn't. But I would argue Arnheid's in much worse shape than that slave was then. And he's like, and that's when he's like, speak as loudly as you can to her. And Einar's saying that he loves her and needs her. I was like, you knew it was true. You knew that he loved her and he just didn't want to say anything because of Gardar, because of Kettle. But now as she's dying, he's able to say it to her. And I think she dies before she can hear him. And he asks for her to live. Poor Bug Eyes. Bug Eyes, this whole episode is like, I came to this strange place, met you strangers, watched a woman get beaten and then die. Bug Eyes like, this is not what I thought was going to happen when we came up here to this island. And then it does, and Einar tries where Thorfinn left off and it doesn't work. Oh. And the voice actor for Arnheid is amazing, but the voice actor for Einar during this whole scene is just, it's so heartbreaking. Because you can feel how much he cared about her in his voice. And it just, it's awful. And then I was doing good. I was doing all right. And then Thorfinn, he like becomes Jesus and talks about Vinland. He like says the thing about the land beyond the reach of slave traders and the flames of war. The land where everyone's free. You'll be able to live without suffering there. Ugh. God, it's heartbreaking. And Leif standing there listening. Leif knowing the speech that he's giving. Oh. He's like, let's go there together. And that part got me too, because I was like, oh my God. Like Thorfinn is counting her among the dead now. Thorfinn is counting her among the ones that have died inadvertently because of him. But he probably blames himself partially for her death. And so now he's like, we'll go there together. I'm going to take the weight of your death with me and carry your soul with me. And we're going to go to Vinland together. Oh my God. We'll build a peaceful nation in Vinland. Just ridiculous. And I was with Einar, like the whole crying bit, I was there. And then that shot of Thorfinn, he looks like Jesus, like the light coming down. I'm like, it's such a good shot of him. He looks more like Thor's than he's ever looked before in his life. And it's like the patron saint, Thorfinn. Like that shot. Oh my God, it's so damn good. And just, I feel like in that moment, Thorfinn understands exactly what his father was feeling when he was talking to that slave that died. I feel like he knows exactly what his father was saying. And that it all clicks in that moment. And then, damn, who to show up right at that time. It didn't click to me at first. I was like, oh, Snake's here. And then I was like, oh shit, Kettle's here. Oh shit, there's Arnheid, Einar. Like, it didn't click at first. And then Snake's like, what are you guys still doing here? Like, I thought you guys would have left by now. And then Einar's seeing Kettle, and he's still breathing. And he goes to attack him. And of course, Thorfinn understands exactly what Einar's going through, because the same emotions that Einar feels towards Kettle right now are the same emotions that Thorfinn felt towards Askeladd for years. And he's like, Einar, if you go down this path, you're going to end up like me, and you're going to end up in that pit of despair, and I don't want you to end up in that same hell that I went through. He's like, don't do it. You won't. He's like, when Askeladd died, I didn't feel better. You won't feel better even if Kettle dies. It won't take away your rage. It won't take away your pain. And Thorfinn just like going back and punching him. And Snake saying, so Arnheid's dead. He's like, And yeah, Thorfinn tries to stop him, and then he just ends up punching him. And the punch brings him back. Like, Thorfinn, I love that Thorgil said that Thors could do one punch and rein him in, and the same thing goes for Thorfinn, right? And at that point, Einar just collapses. He's just a broken man. And, damn it, Thorfinn coming up from behind him and saying, killing the master won't quell your rage. It results in deaths one after another. And him crying there, I'm like, show why? I was stuck in that hell for a long time. And I love that Snake is hearing this. So Snake getting to hear Thorfinn saying this, I love that, because I feel like Snake, it's giving Snake an idea of who Thorfinn is, to be like, oh, you, okay, this is your backstory. Like, I love that Snake gets to hear him say this to Einar, right? To give clarity here. He says, please, Einar. And I love that he gets down low so he can hear him. Don't fall under the same curse that afflicted me. And that curse, the cursed head, the same curse that is afflicting Canute right now, right? Because Canute had killed one after the other, right? He's like, don't let that happen to you. Oh, and then he just sobs. And damn it, Thorfinn crying too. I'm just like, this episode is pure pain. It is just pure pain. I'm like, But I don't know how to describe it. It's like, it's painful and it's sad and tragic, but it's almost like painful in the best way, because you see Thorfinn's message getting spread and you see it actually having influence. Like, he did stop Einar from killing Kettle. He did stop him. Snake did hear Thorfinn's testimony. So I feel it's so tragic, but I feel like, if anything, it's a win for Thorfinn in this moment, because he did stop someone from going down the same path. The religion of Thorfinn reached them, right? Speaking of which, we cut to the open sea, right? And I thought instantly of the OP, where Thorfinn is on the shore looking across the sea and he sees his father. I thought about that, seeing this moment, but they make a grave for Arnheid. They make a stone grave for Arnheid, and we see Bug Eyes and the other guys that help dig the hole. And of course, Einar is devastated, like, at her grave. And I love that Bug Eyes calls Leaf dad. It's so sweet. He's like, get the ship ready to depart. Yep. And they all like go back. Him and these other two guys. And Snake. So yeah, and Snake doesn't say anything. My curiosity is, what is Snake going to do? Like, I don't think Snake would leave with them on the ship. I think he's going to stay with his men. But what happens then with the men? Is Floki and them going to kill Snake and the other men that retreated? Are they going to get taken in by Canute? What's going to happen? Is Snake going to go work for Canute in his army? Because I don't think Kettle's going to make it. And I think he's going to try to either assault Canute or do something. But I don't know. If Thorfinn talks to Canute and gets him to spare Kettle, what do we do with that? So I don't know what's going to happen with Snake and Fox and Badger. I don't think they'll have anything to do with Badger because he only has one arm. But Fox was still intact completely as far as we know. So is Canute going to enlist Fox and Snake into his army? I don't know, because they're not farmers. They can't, or are they going to be left in charge of farmland to like work for Canute? Where's Spherical in all this? Is he dead? I don't know. And Thorgil got away. Olmar got away. What's going to happen with them? There's just like, what are we going to do with that? There's a lot of we still have 21, 22, 23. We still have 4 episodes left. And there's a lot of plot lines that need resolution in those 4 episodes. And I think we're going to get them. But I don't know what's going to happen with those threads, right? And then he leaves Thorfinn as he's like looking down at Einar. And then here's the thing. He hears the voice. And I thought it was Canute speaking. I thought Canute was the one speaking in during this. And it could be Thorfinn too. But he like clenches the fist, which is the anime sign of where things are about to go down. When a character clenches that fist, things are about to happen, right? And he says, God must be watching us, even as we stand here now. And he says, as he looks up into the sky, people losing friends and parents and children killing each other. He must be looking down on everything from up high in heaven. And the interesting thing is that we don't get Thorfinn's response. We don't get Thorfinn's response, right? Canute gave a response in season 1 to kind of the same exact speech. The same monologue happened where he was like, God is watching down on all of us, killing each other. And for Canute, him and Willibald's conversation, the end result was that Canute thought that God had forsaken them. And that he was like, God looked down on us and saw how much we had sinned and abandoned us. And so we have to be in charge of our own destiny. And Canute seemed to reflect on religion negatively. And that it was a negative thing, that God wasn't there to help them. So he was going to have to just take over and do everything himself. But what we don't get is we don't get Thorfinn's thoughts on the matter. So the question is, does Thorfinn think the same thing as Canute, that God's abandoned them and that it's up to them to do something about it? Does Thorfinn think the same thing that Canute thought back then? He could. That could be. Or could he think that God is looking down on us and is angry at us that we're killing each other and not doing things right? Does he think that? I would like to think, my thing is, I would love it if both Thorfinn and Canute came to the same conclusion, that they thought that they were going to have to do things themselves. The difference is Canute believed that they were abandoned by faith and left in the darkness to try to find their own way into the light. Whereas it would be interesting if Thorfinn thought, we are going to have to do everything ourselves. We are going to have to bring the faith and the light to others to show them that there is a way. Like, it'd be interesting if they both came to the same conclusion, but drew different implications from it. Like, that would be very interesting, because it seems like Canute and Thorfinn in this season have been on the same wavelength. They're just tuning into different channels, right? That they're coming in loud and clear, just on different channels from each other. So I love that look on his face, though, when he looks up into the light and decides, because that's the thing, too. The thing, too, is you can also look at it as if we're viewing the king, which is Canute in this case, as the one high up in heaven. Canute is the one highest on the ladder. And the thing about it is, you could view it the way that we just talked about, or Thorfinn is referring to when we look up to heaven, we can't speak to God because God is not available to listen to us. We can shout up to him, but we will not necessarily get an answer. Thorfinn realizes maybe in this moment that, wait a minute, if we're equating Canute to the mortal human version of the one on top of the throne right now, he's like, Canute is here. He is able to be talked to. So why don't we do that? Like, that would be a thing too. Like you can't technically go up to heaven and speak to God in the heavens, but you can speak to Canute because he's immortal right here, right now. He just happens to be on the highest rung of the ladder of Denmark. So Thorfinn's like, why am I going to abandon the opportunity to speak to the highest in power right now? That's what I was going to get at earlier, was that it almost seemed like, because in this moment, I'm like, Thorfinn, you have an out. You could leave with Leif. You could run away. You could go. And it seems like Thorfinn does want to go to Iceland. He does want to leave with Leif. He wants to go back home. He tells Leif, he's like, look, I used to think when I was a kid that those people that came to Iceland were cowards. But now I realize that they were so brave for being able to leave the conflict and come here. My father was brave for leaving the conflict and coming here. He's like, I should have gave them more credit. But if I run away from this opportunity to speak to the man that is in the highest authority right now, it will be no different than me abandoning God and then running away. Because that's kind of what Canute did. Canute ran away from God and was like, if you're abandoning me, I'm abandoning you. I'll do things on my own. And Thorfinn's like, yeah, I could run away and abandon this opportunity, but I need to take responsibility. And now that I have the chance, speak to Canute and say my piece. Okay, we'll see how that goes. And Leif's like, what do you intend to do? And Thorfinn, I'm going to go see Canute. And Leif's like, why? The master's still alive. He hasn't been captured. The battle isn't over. I may be able to prevent some more deaths. Yeah, so what Thorfinn doesn't know is he doesn't know that Canute kind of is on the same wavelength as him. He doesn't know that Canute really doesn't want to kill anybody. He just is trying to take control of the island. So I think Thorfinn and Canute might be pleasantly surprised when they meet one another to know that they're actually more alike than they think at this point. The last time we saw Thorfinn and Canute together back in season 1 was the scar. I wonder if Canute's going to bring up the scar. I'm sure he will. But I'm thinking back of all the season 1 moments of Thorfinn and Canute, thinking of them in the house eating the rabbit stew with Ragnar, thinking of them like on the cart together, thinking of them at the end of season 1, like all those moments, it was just pouty Thorfinn and Canute being a diva. And now, as adults, how is that reunion going to go? I don't know. It's like the possibilities are endless. I'm like kind of fangirling about it. And Leif's like, we need to leave. And he's like, why do you have to do this? Because Leif's like, Thorfinn, I don't want to lose you again. He's like, I have spent this entire last 2 seasons getting you to come with me. Please, let me take you back to Iceland. And that's when Thorfinn thinks back to then. And him telling Leif, he has the hand gripped. He says, I'd estimate Canute only brought around 100 men. I should be able to make it back alive. Just have the ship ready for me. He's like, I'm going to come with you. And I love that Leif says, his little eye shaking. He's like, I am going to come back. I just got to take my 5'1" self to go talk to Canute. Isn't Canute like 5'8", 5'9"? Like, I want to see the height difference. I want to see it. Damn it. We're going back to Iceland no matter what, Thorfinn. Don't jinx it, Leif. I'm like, damn it. My fear is that Canute is going to see Thorfinn and be like, I want to take you with me. That's what I'm afraid of. On the one hand, I want them to go to Iceland and get off of the island. On the other hand, shipping. Damn it. I have a feeling that I'm really going to like the next episode or the next 2 episodes, but we got to get there first. And Thorfinn has to get to Canute first. That's the problem. I don't think Canute has a problem talking to Thorfinn and wants to hear him out, but I think that Thorfinn has to get to Canute from everyone else first. So what are we going to do about that? How are we going to handle that? Oh my God. The show hasn't missed, and this episode was amazing. But y'all, I don't know what's going to happen next. So I'm very curious to know your thoughts down below, what you all thought of this episode. I hope you all enjoyed the reaction and the discussion. But yeah, next episode is going to be wild, and I cannot wait. So in the meantime, I hope you all have a wonderful week. Please stay safe, take care, and yes, I will be back next week with episode 21 of Vinland Saga. Bye!